Have you wondered when humans began to lose their connection to nature and what that did to them? It started around 10,000 years ago with the agricultural revolution, when populations moved from a more nomadic life to fixed settlements that could plant crops on demand instead of relying on wild seasonal foods. That disconnection got much worse in the 1700s when the Industrial Revolution pushed people away from the land and into urban and suburban places, removing them from anything that resembled nature. And did you know that this disconnection from nature also led us to lose a fundamental spiritual skill? It's the spiritual skill of knowing how to work with the cycles of life. Humans used to know the importance of cycles because their lives depended on it. To plant and harvest crops, they had to know when winter was coming or when spring was here. They had to be intimately connected to the sun to know when the day started and ended. But once our ancestors began moving into urban areas, we lost the wisdom of working with cycles, especially how to work with the end of cycles. But after watching this video, you'll reclaim this lost spiritual skill and your life will dramatically change for the better. And here's why. Because the success of a new cycle in your life always depends on how you end the last cycle. In this video, you'll learn why it's so important to work with an end cycle, how to end a cycle in your life the right way, a powerful end of cycle practice that you can use whenever you feel an end coming, and you can download 10 journal prompts to help you end a cycle with intention. First, why it's so important to work with cycles. There are two main reasons for this. The first one is that the energy is different in each type of cycle, and that means each cycle in your life holds the frequency that's most beneficial to you at any given moment. Think of it like a river. If I kayak on a river, the best and easiest way for me to navigate is to go in the same direction as the flow of the water. But if I try to paddle upstream, I'll go nowhere, or I'll move very slowly and use up so much of my energy. But if I turn my kayak downstream, I almost don't even need to paddle because the current will move my kayak quickly downstream. This is what happens energetically when I work with cycles. A great energy momentum happens at the end of cycles, and if I know how to work with the quality of that energy, I can end things with a lot more power and use the energy to transform that ending, preparing myself best for the new beginning that comes after that. The second reason why working with cycles is so important is that I focus my attention and intention. And by doing this, I create accelerated transformation. Here's an example of this at play. Let's say I'm in a relationship, things aren't going well, and I decide to end that relationship. If I don't know how to work with end cycles, I may be tempted to just move on with my life and say something like, oh well, I guess that person wasn't right for me, so I'll just go find another one. And then a month or a year later, I find another person, and pretty soon I notice that the same issues I had with the previous relationship are coming up in this one. It's like I'm dating the same person again. But now rewind this scenario and let's say I knew how to work with an end of cycle. I end the relationship and then spend time focusing on properly working with the end, taking time to contemplate and journal on the lessons I learned, what I don't want to repeat, and what needs to change in me before I can welcome the type of relationship I really want. The results will be very different in these two scenarios because in one scenario, I knew how to work with the energy of endings, and in the other, I did not. Speaking of journaling, I designed a free workbook with 10 journal prompts you can use to end a cycle in your life the right way. These prompts help you understand how a specific cycle has unfolded this way for you, the key lessons from the cycle, and what you need to change or expand in yourself moving forward. To download the journal prompts, click on the link below in the description box of this video. Now on to how to end a cycle the right way. There are 3 rules when working with the energy of endings. Rule 1 is to become comfortable with the energy of death. This is the biggest secret when working with end of cycles. You must become comfortable with death. End of cycles require you to allow death energy to come in and help clear things inside of you and in your life before new beginnings can occur. Death and birth are 2 sides of the same coin. You can't have one without the other. Let's use an example from nature to illustrate the importance of death energy. In the fall, many trees lose their leaves as they die and fall to the ground. The dead leaves rot and serve as substrate for the soil, which then grows plants due to the rotting foliage. So the dead leaves provide the environment for new life to be born. It's the same for ends of cycles in your life. When one cycle comes to an end, it creates the environment and energy for new cycles to take place and for your growth to be continuous throughout your life. The end of a cycle is the nutritious substrate that gives birth to a new cycle. So learning to accept death, become friends with it, and not being attached to anything that's dying is essential, because if we keep clinging on to something that is dying, it will eventually poison our energy and our lives. Rule number 2 is to create space and time. This is a more ceremonial energy and one where you focus your attention in order to create the space to contemplate how far you've come and what you've learned. When you're ending a cycle, it's essential to create time and space to be with yourself and reflect on how far you've come, what this cycle has brought you, and what you might want to change moving forward. I love to create space by setting some time in my schedule for silence and no distractions or interruptions. I turn off my phone and sit in silence for a while, just contemplating the end of a specific cycle. I love to do this practice at the end of the year, right before New Year's, because that's one of my favorite cycles to celebrate. A lot can happen in 12 months, and I love to use the time right after Christmas and before New Year's to make time for this end of cycle contemplation. But you can create space at the end of any cycle, like the end of a relationship or the end of a specific phase in your career or job. You can even create this silent space at the end of a healing cycle, like during what's known as the dark night of the soul, when you heal and experience so much transformation. The types of cycles will be different for each of us, but the rules are always the same no matter which end of cycles you're working through. Rule number 3 is to use powerful intention. Your intention amplifies energy and makes the door to a specific cycle close faster and more powerfully. Your intention should be focused on letting something die or end. Remaining open and surrendered to what needs to end, being aware of how far you've come during this cycle, the lessons you've learned, and who you've become as a result of this cycle. The power of your energy should be focused on closing a door or letting something go and honoring that cycle as you close the door. Once you know how to work with these 3 rules, you're now ready for a powerful spiritual practice that gives meaning and energy to the cycle you're about to close. Here's the 3-step practice I use in my own life when ending cycles. Step 1 is to review the cycle. I start my cycle review with silence and contemplation. I sit quietly, sometimes with my eyes closed or sometimes just staring out into space. This helps me create a silent space in my heart and mind to receive key insights without any mental prompting. And this is a pro tip. It's crucial for you to learn to sit in boredom, not doing anything at all. This creates what's known as white space for your intuition to receive insights. Sometimes I sit here for 20 minutes or even an hour before I feel like I'm ready to write in my journal. Then I grab my journal and write down answers to specific prompts to learn the lessons and contemplate how far I've come. This is where you can use the journal prompts I prepared for you and that you can download in the link below. But here's one of those prompts to help you get started. What were the defining moments of this cycle? Write about 3 experiences that shaped you the most and how they changed your perspective. This helps my memory come alive, and I can then remember things that happened during the cycle. And as I write them, more memories may come to mind. This recall is important to help bring the energy of the cycle to the surface for processing. Step number 2 is ceremony. I love to use ceremonies to end cycles because the symbolism of ceremony amplifies energy and makes the end of the cycle more powerful and clear-cut in my life. For the end of cycles, I love to use a simple fire ceremony to close off the cycle and transmute its energy. I write down the cycle that I'm closing or some specifics about the cycle, and then I fold the paper and burn it in a heat-resistant dish. Write down the parts of the cycle that you wish to release and transmute and burn that in the fire. This simple step is a great way to close the door of an energy cycle and purify the energy with the element of fire. Step number 3 is intention or a decree. As I'm burning the paper and closing the door on the cycle, I like to use powerful intention mantras or decrees to focus my energy more. As the paper burns, I say something like, "It is my powerful intention as the co-creator of my life to close this cycle in all directions of time and all dimensions of space. I close this cycle with love and power, taking only the lessons, wisdom, and love, and leaving everything else. And so it is. Now that you know how to end a cycle in your life, check out this video to find out if you're doing any of these 3 toxic spiritual habits that may be holding you back in life.
This video is now finished. I'm going to disappear.